It's Wednesday, July 3. I'm Anthony Davis. He's Ron Filipkowski. This is Uncovered. Look, Ron, I've got like gestures now. This has become a whole thing. This is
like
where we
uncover
uncover
Trump Jr. now.
Yes, I know. I should be also doing the accordion playing as well. There's so many things to do. We uncover the MAGA propaganda that is rarely covered by the mainstream media. It has been the week of all weeks. Some might even call it, Ron, the end of days. And
it changes like hourly. You know?
Yeah, it certainly does. And so I think, we have a smile on our face, but that's because it's a coping mechanism for dealing with the tragedy that is US politics and everything that goes with it. We should start by saying that I'm recording this in London, where I have come for my sister's wedding. And so far I've spent 9 days in quarantine because I picked up the nastiest strain of coronavirus whilst on the Paris metro. And so I apologize if my voice is a little hoarse. In fact, you are the first person other than my wife that I've seen now for 9 days.
As it should be. As it should be.
Yes, exactly. It's like a love triangle, the three of us.
You're like Trump. You deserve a Purple Heart.
Thank you.
You deserve some kind of medal.
Yeah, I would rather just be well, to be honest. I think that makes a big difference. Interestingly, this strain of COVID is called flirt. And so I don't know if that's going to change this show in any way. Well, we'll have to see. Okay, so let's start by talking about the decision to give Donald Trump and future presidents and past presidents, I guess, immunity. It's for those that have been kind of reading really getting into the weeds of this decision. It does go beyond kind of unofficial business or under official business, because who knows what is official and what isn't official, especially when it comes to Donald Trump's behavior, right?
I mean, the people who are sort of misreading this opinion are all over the place, and I'm not being snobbish here and saying like lawyers understand it and non-lawyers don't, because that's not the case. I've seen some pretty smart lawyers with some bad takes on what this case says, and that makes me think that, look, the opinion was like 119 pages. Makes me think they didn't read it. They maybe read the syllabus or the head notes, but it's a disaster in my opinion. I mean, it's a horrible thing, and there's so much distressing about this, but one of the most distressing things is all these Republicans that are celebrating this opinion. Yes. When I can just tell you, if this opinion came down like pre-Donald Trump, this exact opinion, when, say, Barack Obama was president, Republicans would be screaming from the mountaintops about this. Yeah. But because this benefits Donald Trump in the short term, this permanent change to our republic is all cool with them, because it benefits Trump. But this, as a lifelong conservative, this is not a conservative decision. This is a terrible decision, I think, for everyone in both parties, because of what this means, that any bad actor, executive, can just wreak havoc. And look, part of what restrained them was not just impeachment, but because impeachment is not going to restrain a bad president, because as long as he knows he can count on 34 senators to have his back or her back, then he has nothing to worry about. But the idea that you could be prosecuted criminally, I think, held a lot of these people in check. But now that they know largely they can't, as long as they follow a certain roadmap, and I'd like to talk about that too, get into the little bit of the guts of the decision, then they can do some really horrific things with no consequences.
We also have to think about why they have done this and why now, because, this is something that they've been trying to do, or they have been doing, drip, drip, drip over 30 years. The erosion of freedoms and of the institutions that keep Americans safe, effectively, not just safe from foreign actors and adversaries, but safe from our own presidents and leaders. And I've made a video that you can watch separately on Midas Touch about the Federalist Society and the people behind this, the installation of those three Supreme Court justices under Donald Trump. And of course, with them, we now have a kind of 6-3 court. Notice it's almost like men against women as well. That's the other thing I was thinking about that we don't really talk about, do we? And Amy Coney Barrett aside, who's from a religious cult, it really is, the boys against the girls.
She departed in a fairly significant way with the majority, Amy Coney Barrett, in this opinion. She didn't go along with the majority on everything. She concurred in the end result, but I think that's a ploy. I think that's a trick.
I think that they do that on purpose to try and lull people into a false sense of security, that there is some kind of separation of powers and that they are, impartial. But at the end of the day, they always come round.
Here's the thing. To me, they obviously have in their heads that the executive, the president, should wield far greater power, I think, than the founders of this country envisioned. Yes. And I think that that's what they want. Because I'll say this, because their reasoning for the real key part of this opinion was that it is critically, in their view, it is critically important for a U.S. president to be aggressive, vigorous, wholly unconcerned with negative consequences of their decisions. And that if they are worried about negative consequences emanating from their decisions, they will be paralyzed, they will be afraid to act, and they won't be able to do their job properly. I don't agree with that premise in any way. I mean, I completely disagree with that. But that was sort of the underlying reasoning for their decision, carving out this broad definition of immunity for presidents, because they felt like, well, if we don't let them basically have free reign, they'll be afraid to be bold. They use those words a lot: bold, fearless, aggressive. I don't think that that's what the founders envisioned for an American president.
But the timing, as far as I read it, is because they plan to install Donald Trump as president no matter what. They don't care if he loses the election in November, Ron, because now it's irrelevant. Now all the judiciary is on side in courts at all levels. This is part of a long-term plan to successfully overturn the election results if he loses. Of course, they failed back in 2020, 2021. They're not going to make that mistake again. And so the way I kind of put this together is that this is part of the bigger plan. You've got, the Heritage Foundation on one side preparing Project 2025, and then in this side with the Supreme Court Justice, you have the Federalist Society planning this kind of this dystopian future for the United States under Trump. I mean, this is what's ironic, Ron, is that Donald Trump isn't even the president at the moment. Joe Biden is the president, and yet everything we are experiencing is the legacy of Trumpism. The fact that Trump still controls the Supreme Court is proof that Trump is kind of running a shadow presidency.
Still driving the public conversation, still driving the courts and the decisions. It's to me it's a shocking decision in so many ways. I mean, I don't know whether your theory is right or not. I mean, I guess time will tell, but one of the things that sort of lends credence to it is the obvious attempt to delay the trial until after the election. Because look, here's what I said a couple weeks ago on this show. I said, look, they're going to issue, I didn't think that they would give him full immunity. I thought they would do some kind of balancing test, kick it down to Chutkan. She would apply that test at trial. And that was the only case that could possibly go to trial. That's the way it always works in every Supreme Court decision involving criminal law. They're gonna lay out a test, 2 or 3 parts to the test, kick it back to the trial court and say, here's the test, apply the test. However, in this particular case, they did not do that. They did something completely bizarre and unusual and unprecedented. They said, well, we're we're not really going to be pinned down right now about defining the details of what a presumptive immunity is or what official acts are. We're not going to get bogged down. What we want you to do, Judge Chutkan, is go through each piece of evidence in the case and decide this is core immunity, this is presumptive immunity, this is no immunity. Go through that with each witness, each fact, each piece of evidence, then send it back to us, and we'll go through those few hundred things, and we'll decide if you're right. Then we'll send it back to you. I mean, I've never seen an opinion like that before. And you either have to conclude one or two things. One is they couldn't define those terms, so they needed just some hard examples to work off of in working through their definition, which is sort of what the court did with obscenity back in the 50s when they were struggling to define what obscenity was. Or they just intentionally did this to delay the case until after the election. One of those two.
I'm going with that one because so far, and I don't want to play the told you so game, but Ron, I told you so. I told you that this court was in the tank for Donald Trump.
You were more right than me, for sure, on that. For sure.
But this is because the people who have experience in law, former lawyers or lawyers like yourself, there is this kind of trust in the system. Yeah. Sure. The hoping that the justices will do the right thing.
Yeah.
And they never do, as far as I see it. And I'm coming as an outsider, and I've only been living here for 8 years, and I look at this country and I see it as a lawless country where people only get justice by suing people. They don't rely on precedent or case law. They just have to sue people in order to get any kind of justice. And I mean, but what's going to happen now in terms of Joe Biden? Because this is something I think that, the court, the reason this decision has come when it has, and let's not forget, it was the last day that the Supreme Court was in session. That was no accident either.
Right.
Do you think that they are taking advantage of the fact that Joe Biden is a traditionalist? And that, because effectively they've just handed him sweeping powers, right, to have presidential immunity, knowing that he will not take advantage of that, because he actually made a speech, a very good speech, immediately after this announcement. And he basically said, in the wrong hands, this decision of presidential immunity could be horrific. But, you're not going to get that from me because I'm a safe pair of hands. And I was thinking, I kind of, do we need a radical right now?
Well, and Joe has also been very consistent on pushing back against a lot of people wanting to expand the court or do other things.
Yes.
I think it's not only that they perceive Joe Biden that way. You're right. I absolutely believe you're right, that they don't believe that he will push back in any serious way against them, because he is a 80-year-old traditionalist. He is a guy who's been in DC for 50 years, his whole life, and believes in the institutions as I do. But I think it's also the Senate. That's the key. They also believe that there's no will in the Senate Judiciary Committee to do any oversight whatsoever. And that was proven with the Clarence Thomas, Harlan Crow stuff when they did nothing. I mean, they issued some strongly worded letters. John Roberts took the letters and, like Nancy Pelosi with Trump's speech, tore them up and threw them in the trash. And that was it. They don't appear to be interested in much of any kind of oversight. Sheldon Whitehouse is the one that's most aggressive talking about it, but they don't do anything. So, yeah, it's sort of like, I feel a lot of parallels between like Republicans' frustration with James Comer not being able to, do anything about Hunter. Like they have their complaints. I almost have some of the same complaints about Democrats in the Senate when it comes to the Supreme Court.
We now have clarity that the Supreme Court is corrupt. The six conservatives, not really conservatives, they are operatives. They're operatives, as we know, for far-right Christian nationalism. They're operatives, some might argue, for Vladimir Putin's intentions for the United States. They are operatives for the Federalist Society. They are operatives for all of these advocacy groups that have been pushing to deregulate because they're in the pockets of big business and the lobbyists. I mean, it's so clear now. There's no question about it. So the only way to deal with it is to impeach them. And the only way you can impeach Supreme Court justices, because if I'm not wrong, Congress has oversight over the Supreme Court.
Absolutely.
And so it would be for Congress to impeach the 6 justices of whom have lied about their intentions when they were, interviewed in these hearings, but have also taken a position that is so dangerous that it is going to kind of effectively, bring down America's institutions and change the very fabric of the nation. The only way to do that, though, is to get a clean sweep in the election, though, is to win all 3 branches of government for the Democrats.
Yeah, well, yeah, at least 2. But, you have to have the House and Senate. But, which is 1 branch. I shouldn't say that's 2 branches. I don't want people like clipping that and going, he thought there was, there were different branches of the government. But you have to have those 2. But here's the point. Like, a lot of people will say, like, well, you're not going to ever be able to get 2/3 vote to like convict Clarence Thomas. That's not the point. The point is, if you even just did an impeachment, and even if it passed the House, that would be send a very strong message to the rest of the court that, hey, we're done fooling around. And clearly the case is there for Thomas. I mean, clearly with all the Harlan Crow stuff. I mean, that's the strongest case if you were going to bring one. But of course, you can't bring one in the current House. But even if you felt like you couldn't get the conviction, at least it would have a public hearing. He would have to come before the Senate and sit there and be tried and defend himself. And I think that would really send a message to all the other justices, like, we're done fooling around with you. I think that would be a really powerful and a good idea. But of course, as we know, it's not going to happen as long as Republicans control the House.
Yeah. I said in this video that I just made that the United States has changed fundamentally since I moved here, right? I moved here 2 weeks before Donald Trump's inauguration. and if you think about the US as it was under Obama and how the US as it was under Trump and as it is now with these extreme decisions. I mean, it's remarkable, isn't it, that these decisions are being made under a Joe Biden presidency.
At every level, the courts. I mean, it's the judges, the justices on the Supreme Court. The grassroots of both parties have changed so much.
Yes.
Different people. Like, you go to a Republican meeting now, and like half the people in there weren't in there in 2016.
Right.
They were in those meetings. So it's so crazy how upside down everything has become. And, it's easy to say, well, it's not just Donald Trump, but Donald Trump was the impetus for so much of this. Without him, I don't think we'd be in this place right now because they used him. They knew that he was an empty vessel. They knew that he was insecure and naive and that he didn't have a brain cell between his ears. And so they used him. They said nice things about him. They played his little game of the narcissistic personality game. And then they used him to take advantage of all of the loopholes because he doesn't care for policy. I mean, you'll notice, and we're going to show a little clip later of him and his golf swing, and we must talk about the debate. But during that debate, the only thing that really lit Donald Trump up was when they started talking about his golf handicap. That's right.
It was the only thing where he suddenly became energized about something as opposed to just
topic that interested him.
Yes. And that's what I'm talking about. The guy only cares for golf and McDonald's, and everything else is he's having women. To force himself to do, and women. But he's
money.
Yeah, but even those things, I don't think he would talk energetically about in the same way that that golf and where's the pass the ketchup, and so that's what makes me so sad is that he has been used. He was used by Putin and is being used by Putin as a mark, and he's also being used by the Federalist Society and the Judiciary to manipulating him as well. He didn't choose those Supreme Court justices. The decision was made by Leonard Leo, and he was given the list. This is who you're going to be nominating.
Exactly.
It's so interesting, isn't it? With hindsight,
McConnell and Leonard Leo working together. Correct.
Right.
Yeah.
And
Trump didn't know any of them.
No, and still doesn't really care.
Yeah.
So, okay, let's talk about the debate, because I think, some people have been waiting a whole week for us to kind of, talk about this. It's obviously extremely controversial. We have to, yeah. Now, I'll caveat with this this is my area of expertise. I've worked as a debate prep person. I've in UK politics, I've trained politicians for TV debates for many years, and so it's something I really care about and I have an interest in. And I would say that whoever was advising Joe Biden made some terrible errors. Overfilling his head with information, over preparing him, not resting him. I think he was, doing other engagements that day aside from his, week of prep at Camp David. And I think that in addition to being unwell, it was a recipe for disaster for Joe Biden. And we can talk in a second about Donald Trump just lying throughout the whole thing. That's one thing. But I said from the beginning, Joe Biden should never have agreed to debate Donald Trump. Not because he's not up to it, but because it legitimizes Donald Trump as a candidate rather than as a dictator and somebody who has tried to crash the system of U.S. government. Yeah.
I mean, I'm really not trying to make excuses for him, in any way. But there are reasons, not excuses. And
yeah, I
think that we talked before about there's so much of the electorate is not political junkies. And it's hard for people who are to really get that, which they're not on social media and they don't watch the cable news and they watch sports and stuff like that. And we've talked about this before. This is around the time they check back in. And many of them have not seen much of Donald Trump or Joe Biden, which is hard for us to imagine because they're in our faces all the time, but for a lot of people, they aren't. And so they haven't really seen much of these people in 3 years. And the unfortunate part about it is this is the first time they've seen Joe Biden in a while in any meaningful way. And this is the impression that they have. So yeah, I think for myself, who covers right-wing media and right-wing social media, Biden's performance wasn't as bad, I think, as it was to a lot of other people, because I'm used to seeing Republicans doing deceptive clips and clipping every mistake, every gaffe. And look, Joe Biden isn't who he was 8 years ago, 12 years ago. None of us are. We're all older, and he's definitely, lost some miles on his fastball. He doesn't speak as clearly. He admitted these things right after the debate. Right. Okay. He doesn't walk as well. He doesn't talk as well. All those things stipulated. And I'm used to seeing all his mistakes all the time. So it really wasn't. But what struck me about this debate was when you added to his normal issues because of age, the things that you said, which is, that he has a cold. Add to that, they hold him away at Camp David for 7 days with 16 different experts filling his head full of facts and figures. And back in the day, Joe Biden loved to rattle off. You can watch old interviews of him from the 90s. I have been. Yeah. And he rattles off these facts and figures, number 1, number 2, number 3, and 8%, and this 2.4% GPD. That's his debate style. And so they prepped him as if he was 60-year-old Joe Biden.
Such a mistake. Such a mistake.
He can't do that anymore. You instead of giving him 10 things, give him 3. That's what they did with Ronald Reagan, and it worked.
He didn't do any big picture stuff, and that's what frustrated me. He didn't talk about the democracy falling and the rise of dictatorship or fascism. He didn't talk about Donald Trump kind of, being a puppet of Putin and, who are the adversaries. He didn't really kind of present what's at stake in this election, because I wanted him to make it, not about jobs numbers and not about, that kind of minutiae, but to make it about this existential crisis that the United States is facing because of the threat of 4 more years of Trump. And, that would have been easier for him to get his head around, because he cares passionately about it and he knows all that stuff. And he really doesn't need to kind of, use random numbers because people don't remember that stuff. And the other thing I would say is that, the environment, having worked in TV studios, it is so unnatural. It is not a normal and natural place for someone like Joe Biden. He is great on the rally stage. He is great at State of the Union with the teleprompter and then, riffing, and as he did last time around. But being under pressure, talking to time, this is the other thing. They had a time clock on all of these things. And if you have a stutter, people don't seem to take enough of an interest in, humanity. In understanding what it means to have a speech impediment, understanding what it means to be 81. Like, I almost think that people have forgotten what aging is because we don't live with our grandparents anymore, like we used to. We used to live in the same home. So we are required to understand a little bit more about aging and caring and humanity. But all of that goes out the window. They're like, he's got dementia. And it's like, if you know anything about dementia, you know that he doesn't present any signs of dementia. He is just an older guy who is put in a TV studio, and it is so hard to do that. I worked with some really young, energized politicians, and they fell to pieces under pressure in a television studio with moderators and lighting and a time clock on the screen. And then, of course, we need to talk about CNN and their loaded questions and their inability to push back against Trump's lies.
Yeah, I mean, before that though, like what struck me is like he had all these really great lines, and that so many of them came from his advisors. They were good lines, but the problem is they were like buried in a blizzard of talking points that he's struggling to get out. And so one of the best
morals
lines,
of an alley cat.
Yeah, like one of my favorite lines was when he said, "Look," he said, 40 of his 44 cabinet secretaries don't endorse him. His own vice president doesn't endorse him. That is an incredible, one of the most powerful things you could say in this debate is that to the average American that we were just talking about, the non-political junkies, that's something that really resonates with them. Really? 40 out of 44 are not supporting him?
Yeah.
But he buried that in the middle of this spree of talking points. It was in the middle of an answer. And it was just sort of like, oh, I've been told that I need to say that, and I'm going to wedge that into my answer about climate change or something, and it's like, God, he should have just had, instead of having 200 of those talking points, he should have had 30, and just,
I would have just sat him down in an
Trump only
armchair.
had one, migrant crime.
That's right. That's
he
right.
went in there with one thing he wanted to talk about,
Yeah. I mean, Trump is a fake, right? He is a fake politician. He pretends to be the president, the ex-president. The whole thing to him is a performance. It's an extension, as we've discussed before, of The Apprentice. And so he thrives in the television studio. He thrives under the lights and under the pressure because he is a fake personality. And Joe Biden is not a fake. He's the real deal. What you see is what you get. He's the same off screen as he is on screen. And so that is why it's much harder for Joe Biden to be himself under those circumstances, and why Donald Trump is a made-for-television president, and he is just able to pull it off and fake it. And it doesn't mean that he's better at being a president, because I'm kind of sick of this argument of like, well, if Biden can't even do a debate, then how's he supposed to run the country? And it's like, you don't run the country under hot lights and a 60-second clock on the screen. But, you delegate.
That's also why he was chosen for The Apprentice, right? It goes back to that because there were 1,000 more successful business people in America than Donald Trump when they were deciding who was going to host The Apprentice. But they knew that Donald Trump could fake and entertain being a successful businessman. better than those guys.
Well, because he is a good actor. In Home Alone 2, in his cameo, he was really good. I mean, that video that I keep watching of him and Rudy Giuliani wearing a dress in the store where they're kind of flirting with each other. It was brilliant. It's like an SNL sketch. Yeah. That's his strength, and that is not who Joe Biden is. Joe Biden is a lifelong administrator and public servant, and I keep reminding people that politics should be boring, and I don't know why it's become a contest of personality, because a 90-minute debate, like the pundits, the reaction from pundits and commentators and journalists saying, well, trashing Biden's entire existence off the back of a 90-minute television debate, which is not the election. It's a TV debate. And also, it's not even an official TV debate. They decided not to do the official format. And they chose this format, which was a disaster. I was very upset, as you can probably tell.
The reaction was very upset. It's hard for me even today to go on Twitter, even now, because it's just everybody's fighting with each other over this, and part of the thing that's most distressing to me as a former Republican is we have this, I guess we have this sort of club of ex-Republicans who left the party over Trump and Trumpism. And one of the most disheartening things for me is that the chorus of people leading the charge to toss Biden, those people. And and like Stuart Stevens and Mike Madrid are probably like the three exceptions, or maybe there's one or two more, but pretty much everybody else was get rid of Joe Biden. And, and a lot of them have taken heat, from lifelong Democrats saying, man, we trusted you guys. We welcomed you into our party in 2020 and 2016. And we liked you guys. And what are you doing right now? And I have a theory about that. My theory is this: look, they have most of these former Republicans, and them well, they're all over the media. They're probably overrepresented on MSNBC. Yeah. They have no investment in the Democratic Party. They have no investment in the ideas, in the policies. They don't care about them. They don't even agree with a lot of them. They don't particularly like the people. They don't particularly like or love Joe Biden or Nancy Pelosi or Cory Booker or any of these guys. All they care about is defeating Donald Trump. That's it. That's all they care about. So if that's really your main thing here, then, you can just easily just go, okay, this is not the guy who gives us the best chance to beat Trump. Get rid of him, because they have no investment in the party, the ideas, anything. So I think that's, to me, the reason why we've seen a lot of former Republicans leading the charge on this. And, the fights that have broken out between the traditional lifelong Democrats and former Republicans is very disheartening to me.
I put out a tweet the morning after the debate that got over 1 million views. I put 5 points. 1, Biden is not stepping down, nor should he. 2, Biden is the best chance Democrats have of winning. Number 3, critics seem to have lost all sense of humanity over one 90-minute debate. 4, a healthy, well-rested Biden is an excellent candidate. And number 5, a TV debate is not the election. I mean, people seem to forget that there's 5 months now between now and election day. A lot is going to change between now and then. And I'm not talking about the candidate.
Yeah, I mean, the only way that what you just said there is not true, and I'm inclined to believe just about all of it, is if he's much worse behind the scenes than we know. I mean, that's the only caveat I'll make. And there's some reports along those lines, but then there's more reports that say the opposite, that he's very good behind the scenes and he had a bad night. So it's hard to say who to believe, because you don't know, or have they circled the wagon so much? And here's the answer. And I talked about this with the guys today, which is he has to come out now and either do a sit down. And my understanding is he just did one with George Stephanopoulos that's going to air on Sunday. That's great. But I think it has to be live. He either has to come out and do a press conference, no teleprompter, and take a whole bunch of questions from the press, or he's got to sit down and do a one-on-one live interview. And he needs to do it very soon. Every day he waits and, coming out and giving a 4-minute teleprompter speech and taking no questions and leaving like he did last night was fine, but that's not the answer. He's got to do that. And if he comes out and he does that and he does well, everything's back, we're good. But the longer he does not do that, it just feeds this perception that they're hiding something, So I think that's the biggest thing the campaign needs to do is get him out front as soon as possible.
Yeah, I think that's good advice. My only caveat to that is I would also want to get Kamala Harris out with him together, side by side.
I got to be conscious about this. We have to start using Biden-Harris from now on.
Yes.
To describe this campaign.
Yes.
Not just Biden.
And the cabinet, because he has a cabinet of young, diverse, energized people. And the line I've been running with recently is Biden is the delegator and Trump is the dictator. And if you are a delegator and you work with a team, show the team, have the team around you and speaking for you and as surrogates, because, I'm just not getting enough of these people. And that, if you look at them individually, they're all amazing. They're really capable cabinet positions. And to not take advantage of that in these last 5 months, I think is naive.
I agree. Yep. They all need to be out there and be out there a lot more. Yeah.
We have to take a quick break.
Yeah.
Did you say Pete Buttigieg?
Yeah, he has been.
Yes, he has been. Yeah, he has, and he is brilliant. He is brilliant. And maybe we should just, before we go to the break, maybe we should just kind of put a nod to the other noise that's being made, and that's like, what about Gavin Newsom? Is it too late to kind of switch Biden out for Newsom Harris? I mean, are you paying any attention to this stuff, or do you think that it's not a thing?
Look, I love the Democratic governors in the future, 2020. I love so many. I love Whitmer. I love Gavin Newsom. I love Wes Moore in Maryland. I love Shapiro in Pennsylvania. I love Bashir in Kentucky. We have rock stars at the governor level, but
yes,
look, that ship has sailed. That's not going to happen. Yeah. It's too late for that. There's too many complications. The only way this works, the only way it works, if Biden doesn't do it, is for Harris to be at the top of the ticket and to choose one of those people we just mentioned as a running mate. Without Harris at the top of the ticket, it's not going to work.
Okay. All right, let's take a quick break. Then we're going to come back and talk about Donald Trump now doing business with the Saudis and a whole lot more here on Uncovered. Let me tell you, if there's a surefire way to wake up feeling fresh after drinking, it's with Z-Biotics. Z-Biotics pre-alcohol probiotic drink is the world's first genetically engineered probiotic. It was invented by PhD scientists to tackle rough mornings after drinking. Here's how it works. When you drink, alcohol gets converted into a toxic byproduct in the gut. It's this byproduct, not dehydration, that's to blame for your rough next day. Z-Biotics produces an enzyme to break this byproduct down. Just remember to make Z-Biotics your first drink of the night, drink responsibly, and then you'll feel your best tomorrow. Vacations, weddings, birthdays, and reunions, there's so much going on. Get the most out of your plans by stocking up on pre-alcohol now. Go to zbiotics.com/uncovered to get 15% off your first order when you use Uncovered at checkout. Z-Biotics is backed with a 100% money-back guarantee. So if you're unsatisfied for any reason, they'll refund your money, no questions asked. Remember to head to zbiotics.com/uncovered and use the code UNCOVERED at checkout for 15% off. Thank you, Z-Biotics, for sponsoring this episode and our good times. And you can find details of our sponsors down in the description below. Okay, Ron, so in addition to the Supreme Court giving Donald Trump immunity and future presidents, and in addition to the debate, which has cast a giant shadow on the kind of political situation candidate-wise, Donald Trump is being relentless with his, business dealings, foreign business dealings, and now it's his relationship with the Saudis. This is after it's, been announced that Junior and Eric went to the Middle East. They're financing this new Trump Oman project. Tell us about this.
I just can't believe this is not getting covered more. I don't understand this. When he was president, the media went crazy every time, somebody from a foreign government would buy a scotch at a Trump hotel. They ran a story about it. But what's happening in the last couple of years, since he left the White House, it takes all the emoluments, all the free stuff and money that was spent at his resorts times 1,000.
Yes.
He has so many more foreign entanglements now than he had in 2016 or than he had while president. And yet there's been almost no media coverage. The Jared Kushner thing got plenty of coverage, but let's take Trump himself. Okay, he makes the business deal with the Saudi government to host their live golf tournaments. That's a big deal for Trump. That involves millions of dollars, lots of publicity. He's completely and that also. The PGA pulled all of their tournaments off of his courses after 2016, and that hurt Trump greatly. And so he's desperate to get into hosting professional golf, and he's doing this with the Saudis now.
Yeah.
So that's number one. Then you have this Trump Oman resort where Junior and Eric were this weekend. That's a $500 million resort that the Trumps are putting no money into. This is just a branding thing where they're putting Trump's name on it, and he's getting a big cut of the action without putting in any money. It's going to be called Trump Oman.
Yeah.
And now we learn yesterday a new deal was just announced to build Trump Tower Saudi Arabia in Riyadh. They're building a Trump Tower in Saudi Arabia. I mean, if this man becomes president, he is so he's so intertwined now with these governments in the Middle East, particularly the Saudis. How can you be objective? How can you not shape U.S. government policy to benefit some of your biggest business partners?
But it's not going to matter because he's going to have full immunity, Ron. So this stuff is just going to have to be accepted by society as this is how it works now. Trump has completely become Biff Tannen from Back to the Future 2. I mean, he is the embodiment of everything that we do not want our elected representatives to be. He is a king. That's where we're at. Here's the video. Yeah, I mean, they love a promotional video. I mean, I've said several times, he never divested his interest in the Trump organization when he was president, despite him pretending to and lying about it. And, now he is just going all out, doesn't care. I mean, even the fact that he owns a publicly trading company and wants to be the president, where people can buy shares to curry favor, is absurd. And no one is pushing back on that.
And let's not forget, we spent 3 years on what? Hunter Biden getting like $8 million over a decade from a number. And that's not even Joe Biden. They couldn't even prove Joe Biden got a penny. But his son got like $8 million and we want to impeach the president. Meanwhile, this guy is making $100 million business deals with foreign governments out in the open and not even trying to hide it. That's the other part. That's the video they put out, the Trump org put out. They're bragging about it. They're not even trying to hide it.
Yeah.
They're just saying, we're going to do what we want,
because ultimately they've always done what they want. They just had to pretend that they weren't doing what they want. But now that they have control of the judiciary, now that they have control of the Speaker of the House, now that they have control of the votes, because of course, let's not forget, we haven't actually mentioned that they've been working behind the scenes to rig the Electoral College. So there's a whole system going on. And I need to keep coming back to this fact that to them now, it doesn't matter if Donald Trump loses the election, they're just going to put him in anyway. That is the system that they have in place now, through the judiciary, through the immunity clause and everything else. And so all of these things, announcing, Trump, Oman, and everything else, it kind of doesn't matter anymore. It's all pie in the sky or water under the bridge.
They are starting to act like they're untouchable. They really are, and probably because they've gotten away with so much. And this immunity now, and all these prosecutions falling apart, and Fani Willis's issues, and Aileen Cannon has only reinforced that belief that no matter what we do, they can't get us.
Doesn't it feel like small fry now? The Fani Willis case and even the New York case. I feel like 2 weeks ago it was like the biggest thing, and now Trump's been given immunity, and even with the Chevron case, which is massive, and the reverse of the Chevron doctrine, it's almost as if now it's been trumped. I hate to use that damn word, but there it is. That's probably what that word was always for this moment in history, Ron, because now the stakes are so much higher, and it's I don't want to sound defeatist, but unless everybody votes en masse, like if anyone is sitting out this election, then they really have not understood quite what is at stake.
And I think that is what has caused a lot of people to be very emotional and overreact to the debate, because of what you just said. The stakes are so high, everybody gets it, everybody knows it, that we just don't want anybody to make any mistakes. So when Fani Willis has her relationship with her coworker, or when Joe Biden has a bad debate, people freak out. And they wouldn't be freaking out if we were running against Mitt Romney. But that world is over.
There's that Mitt Romney clip circulating with him and Obama, right, where they're kind of congratulating each other at the debate, right?
I saw that. It was almost like,
just so respectful of each other. World? I know, completely different world. A couple of other news points. I see that Rudy Giuliani got disbarred yesterday, which is great news for the law, but also Steve Bannon, the architect of much of this chaos, is now has reported to prison. I want us to watch this clip of him outside, as he was about to kind of go into prison. Just listen to the contempt with which his supporters and spokespeople have for the judiciary and the system.
And I would also say we turn my friend Steve Bannon over to the guards at the prison here. We will be here in 4 months to collect him in good health, maybe a little thinner and in better shape. But we expect that they take good care of him, or there'll be accountability for that as well.
I mean, again, trying to take control of the power.
And of course, that's Blackwater founder Eric Prince, who had a lot of issues in Iraq and Afghanistan, trying to use his mercenaries over there as government contractors, and got into some trouble there. Now he's out there outside the prison threatening the corrections officers. You better make sure that nothing happens to Steve. But, I had a little back and forth today with some of Steve's closest friends this morning, where they were threatening me over a couple things. And, look, Steve did this to himself. They were complaining that Democrats timed this to take Steve Bannon out of the election during the 4 most important months. And look, I said a year ago on the show, I'm like, he's making a big mistake by delaying his turn-in. And that's what I said a year ago. He was convicted 2 years ago.
I know.
He could have done his 4 months last year and been done, but he kept delaying it. And I said, look, this is going to come back to bite him, because you looking at the time frame when all his appeals are going to be over with and decided, that's going to be like 6 months before the election. So if he's got to do this jail sentence, then that's the worst possible time. And look, I've tried to emphasize this point. Steve Bannon is a very important figure in the MAGA base in terms of mobilizing, energizing, fundraising, grassroots stuff. Steve Bannon is a key guy. I would say he's in the top 5 or 6 guys among the grassroots MAGA movement, maybe number one. Some people would say he's number one. He's out of the game now. Like, we are not going to hear from him for 4 months. That hurts them quite a bit, and they understand that.
Let's talk about this barbershop story. That's it's very interesting. This is a barbershop owner. It's a black barbershop, small business, who thought that he was lending the barbershop to other black business leaders to talk about encouraging black small businesses. And it turned out to be some kind of, effectively an electioneering moment for Donald Trump's surrogates. Tell us the story, then I'll show the clip.
Well, we've chronicled this for a long time. You know, him staging these fake events to make it appear that he has support among the black community. You know, whether it's the Chick-fil-A in Atlanta, the Bronx, the sneaker thing, stationing people with the Blacks for Trump t-shirts behind him at his rallies. We've seen this game being played out because he truly believes, and his campaign believes, that him having all these issues in the courts and being a convicted felon is going to help him with black voters, particularly black male voters. Okay. So that's the theory. And they continue. And rather than actually do the work and diving into these communities and et cetera, they're not interested in doing anything like that. They're interested in contriving these fake events, one right after the other, to try and create this illusion that they have broad support among the black community. And here we go again, a barbershop. This was billed as, they sold this guy on this is going to be about a black business roundtable. That's what he thought. He was not told that this had anything to do with Trump. Trump was not going to be there, etc. Then who shows up? Ben Carson and Byron Donalds, who are Donald Trump's black surrogates, along with Tim Scott. They show up. And I think the owner was a bit taken aback, like, what? And then they start talking about, and he said he kept trying to steer the conversation. And I watched this thing. He kept trying to, and they all looked very uncomfortable. Okay. The guys who were there, it was clear to me watching it live that they were like, what is going on here? This is not what we thought it was going to be. And then to make it even worse, Trump calls in. So Byron Donalds like holding up Trump on speakerphone, and Trump is trashing Joe Biden. And I'm watching the faces of these guys in the barbershop, and they were like deer in headlights. They were like, what are we doing? Like, we didn't, because think about it. They're a black barbershop in Atlanta. They just hosted a Trump campaign event. How the hell is this guy going to stay open? How's he going to keep his business doors open after that? So that's what happened. He lost business. He was getting a lot of heat. Donald Trump doesn't care about people like that.
No,
he's ready to torch their business and light it on fire for his own purposes.
Here's the clip.
The owner of Rocky's Barbershop in Atlanta says he feels he was misled by a campaign event for former President Trump the day before the debate. Rocky Jones tells our Kara Spelzer he thought his Buckhead shop was just hosting a forum for black businesses, but he says he never expected to fade into the realm of politics.
To me, cutting hair is like an art.
And smooth waves are not the only thing Rocky Jones wants his shop to be known for.
We try to specialize in just giving good service to the community. As you can see, I've been here since 17 years and it's been good.
Which is why he jumped at the chance to help other black business owners get ahead.
Started with a text, then it went to a call because I was actually out the country. And just me agreeing to do a black small business, round table. I thought it was like something real private.
It was anything but. Rocky, along with black business owners from across metro Atlanta, crammed into his shop, along with Trump surrogates like Ben Carson. But it wasn't all shop talk.
Thinking about black business in Atlanta, small black businesses in Atlanta. And I'm like, okay, so when are we going to start talking about this?
He says a call from former President Trump during the event cut deep.
Why is the ex-president calling somebody in my barbershop? This has nothing to do with small black businesses.
And he was left with a lot more than razor burn.
We had some calls. Thursday, we definitely got some calls, some backlash, some angry people that don't know me. And I have to deal with that. I have no involvement in politics. We don't even talk politics in my barbershop. It's all sports. Commend everybody to vote, but that's your business. I don't tell you what to do.
The number of customers, he says, has trimmed down, but he hopes the shock will fade and he can keep helping his community. Kara Spelger, 11 Alive News.
Now, we repeatedly reached out to several representatives for the Trump campaign today about the claims that he just made. They have not responded at this time to our phone calls or email.
Yeah, of course they haven't responded because, as you say, Ron, all of this is for show. Like the entire Donald Trump phenomenon is fake. It is, we used to joke about how he would pay half a dozen black people to be at the back of the rally, behind him when he was doing his rallies. But the fraud is on a far greater scale than that. It is literally any event. People are cherry-picked. The timing is chosen to take advantage of crowds that are already there. It's like, this is why it's so frustrating that the media have not kind of woken up to this and realized that the entire Trump presidency and campaign is just a fraudulent event like everything else that he does.
And we also learn that people are paid. Like this guy got $4,600 to host this event. He wasn't told that it was a Trump thing, but that shows you again, they're paying these people.
It's transactional.
Yeah. So what happens? Instead of talking about a black business and how to promote black businesses, it was all about how much Donald Trump did for black people when he was president and how terrible Joe Biden is. And the bottom line is, what did Donald Trump do here? He hurt this black business. In a black business roundtable, he hurt this man's business.
We've got a couple of clips of Trump's latest rally and the first clip I want to show is him talking about black jobs. I've never really heard of black jobs before. I don't think he really knows what they are either, but here he is.
To our country, they're taking their jobs and they're taking the black jobs. People that have had their jobs for a long time are losing their jobs. And Hispanic jobs, people that have had them for a long time, they're losing their jobs. And
what is a black job, Ron?
Look, here's what he's saying. I mean, this is what is in his head. I can just tell you, it's obvious. He said it during the debate, and he said it again in that speech 2 days after the debate. It was either the day after or 2 days. Yeah. Here's what is in his head is like these menial entry-level bottom jobs in American society are being held by minorities, black, Hispanic workers. They're the jobs that basically white people don't want to do, right? And low-paying shit jobs. And those are black jobs. Yeah. And what he's saying is, well, if we let all these migrants in, they're going to take those jobs because they're willing to do them too. And so really, his argument is really who migrants aren't going to take white people's jobs because white people's jobs are like on Wall Street and lawyers and doctors and accountants. So migrants aren't going to take white people's jobs. What he's saying is migrants are going to take black people's jobs because those are the low jobs. Those are the worst jobs. Those require no education, no skill. And so that's the jobs that migrants are going to take. This is what he's saying. And that's why it's that comment. I can just tell you that because I follow what you call Black Twitter, like I'm pretty plugged into that because I follow so many of those influencers. they went ballistic. If there was one part of, I also follow golf Twitter, so they had their, they were latched onto the golf part. But I can tell you, like, the black influencers on Twitter were lit up over that comment of the black jobs. They were on fire, and whatever headway I think that Trump made in that community, he lost it completely with that comment.
This is how he sees the world. This is the kind of the white supremacist in him. This is his view of America and the hierarchy and the white replacement theory, the great replacement theory, all of it. It's all built into that kind of outlook that Donald Trump has. And, when he says the quiet parts out loud, because in one hand, he's like, I am the least racist person you've ever met, right? But he's actually, he has, racism is in his veins, Ron. He doesn't know any different.
He doesn't even know it.
It's systemic, and it's so obvious. And that's why I say that any person of color that considers voting for Donald Trump needs to have a sit down and a long, strong conversation, because he is not on the side of minorities. He lumps everybody together. He thinks that everyone's an immigrant. If you're not white, then you're not American. And that's just, look at my African-American friend over there. Remember that one? It was like, ooh, he is a piece of work. He really is.
The other thing is, like, a lot of racist whites, like, they exempt Asians from that. They're like honorary white, but Donald Trump doesn't even do that. He doesn't like Asians either.
No. It's a very sad indictment of this elite, this kind of class that is, very much taking over in the US, certainly through the immunity announcement and through all of the Supreme Court decisions, including the reversal of Roe. It all goes back to control and to racism. And again, this kind of desire for the white man to be the senior stakeholder in American society. He, at the same rally, he made some references. He's always talking about batteries and electric, and as he did with the shark and the battery in the boat last week. This time, he's talking about airplanes. Let's take a listen.
These guys, you'll never get them done. You'll never get them done. They don't have any clue. All they know is electric. They want electric army tanks. They want electric planes. What happens if the sun isn't shining while you're up in the air? Well, sir, I told you there'd be problems, sir. No, they want electric everything. They want electric boats. The problem, the boats, they don't float. Because the battery is so heavy, it sinks the boat. They say, we don't care, we want them anyway.
I mean, it's not that he's just a racist and a misogynist. He's also the dumbest man in America. It's like, I wouldn't mind if, like, the powers that be had found their candidate because he was a genius and he could talk his way out of anything. I mean, he is literally a complete... I don't even have the words for it. He is a Neanderthal. He is an empty vessel. He has jello for brains.
All of this just goes back to Michigan. If Michigan didn't exist on the map, or if Michigan was not a swing state, Donald Trump would never talk about electric vehicles. Okay, because he's got it in his head, and he's had it in his head for 5 years or more, that his talking point to auto workers is electric vehicles are bad. They're all made in China and they're going to take your jobs and you're all going to be out of work because the Chinese are going to make EVs. So that talking point, which is his only thing he talks about it's the only thing he knows when it comes to the auto industry. It just continues to take on this life of its own in his addled, twisted brain. And that went from, like, where he used to say, like, EVs are worthless because they only go 30 miles and they only go 10 miles and then they got to be recharged and you can't go more than 50 miles an hour. All this gobbledygook nonsense. Then he transitioned over into EV tanks, where he was talking about, how EV tanks are impractical on the battlefield and the Army wants to have all EV tanks. I don't know where that's coming from. So then it became EV boats, and you went to the shark thing, and you might get electrocuted if the boat goes in the water. And now we're on to EV planes, where he says apparently the Air Force now wants to have all their fighter jets with solar panels flying them. And, according to him, this is going to be a problem because if they go into the clouds, they'll crash. This is the man who Republicans want to make commander-in-chief again.
Does he think that a Tesla can't drive in the dark? I mean, right? Because that's really what he's saying. It's so. I mean, incidentally, Airbus have been working on a electric plane for the last 20 years, which I've been reading about regularly. And it's fantastic. But that's not the point. The point is that he has no concept of how solar and battery storage and all of these technologies, because he talks about, the Green New Deal, like it's the worst thing to happen to the planet. Right. And yet, I mean, there are shanty towns in countries with no electricity that have been using solar and little batteries inside their mud huts for decades.
Yeah, sure.
It's like he has no concept, and yet. Do you remember when he kept coming out of the courtroom in New York and trying to talk about? He threw in a few lines about construction, where he was trying to say, I wouldn't mind if they were talking about. Didn't he say like sheet metal or something? I can't remember. He was using like some things that he knew from the construction industry and bringing them into a conversation that had nothing to do with that, just to prove that he knew something about something when he don't know nothing about anything.
Let me ask you a question. So if we asked, a MAGA influencer on Twitter with like 1 million followers or something about this, and and they were sitting in front of us, and you asked them like, how can you defend what Donald Trump is saying about all of this EV stuff? What do you think that I know what their answer is. How do you think that they would respond to that? Like, what's their excuse or reasoning?
Well,
about all the stuff he's saying.
Yeah, I mean, I think that they would probably say, well, all of these EVs come from China. So, this is about America, and this is about building in America.
That's not it.
Go on, let me hear it.
They say he's just joking.
Oh,
this
yes.
is what they say. He's just joking. He's just kidding.
Do you know something? I was listening to that in that clip and in other clips that I've seen from that speech, when he says the thing about the battery initially, everybody starts laughing.
Yeah, they think he's joking. He's not joking.
They think it's a gag.
They think it's a shtick, that it's a comedy thing.
And actually, he is deadly serious because he's so dumb.
Exactly right. That's the truth.
You've cracked it, Ron.
He's kidding around.
They think he is the funniest ex-president ever to exist. In fact, the joke is very much on them.
Yep, exactly right. Yep.
I'm almost speechless now that we've used that.
I hear it all the time. So
yeah, I know.
I can tell you that's the truth.
Yeah. Well, you live in Twitter. I mean, you're literally living inside the grid. Okay, we've only got a couple of minutes left. I want to talk about your favorite Oklahoma school superintendent, Ryan Walters. We've given updates on his new plan to put Bibles back into the classroom. In fact, the last 3 weeks we've talked about it. Here's the latest.
Important announcement today regarding the Bible and the Ten Commandments. My staff has been looking at Oklahoma statute. We've been looking at Oklahoma academic standards. And it's crystal clear to us that in the Oklahoma academic standards, under Title 70, multiple occasions, the Bible is a necessary historical document to teach our kids about the history of this country, to have a complete understanding of Western civilization, to have an understanding of the basis of our legal system. And it's frankly, when we're talking about the Bible, one of the most foundational documents used for the Constitution and the birth of our country. We also find major points in history that refer to the Bible, that reference the Bible. We see multiple figures, whether we're talking about the Federalist Papers, constitutional conventional arguments, and Martin Luther King Jr., who use it as a tremendous impetus for the civil rights movement and tie many of those arguments back to the Bible. It is essential that our kids have an understanding of the Bible and its historical context. So we will be issuing a memo today that every school district will adhere to, which is that every teacher, every classroom in the state will have a Bible in the classroom and will be teaching from the Bible in the classroom to ensure that this historical understanding is there for every student in the state of Oklahoma in accordance with our academic standards and state law.
Yeah. Over to you, Ron.
Well, let's review. Last week, we had breaking news from this guy, which broke the morning that we did the show.
Yeah.
That the Oklahoma Supreme Court had overturned his attempt to finance a private Catholic high school, right? They said you can't do that, violates separation of church and state. The clip you just watched, we just watched, was the next day. Okay, was the very next day. So clearly what we have here is he was so furious and infuriated that his policy got slapped down by his own Republican state Supreme Court and his own Republican Attorney General, that he came out and announced this the next day. In other words, he's like, he didn't just double down, he quadrupled down, because it's one thing to say, okay, we're going to take some state dollars and put it over here to finance this one Catholic school. That's one thing. This puts that on steroids. He now proclaims that every single classroom, public school classroom in Oklahoma, will have a Bible, and not just sitting in the corner. The teacher will teach out of the Bible. Every teacher. This is clearly violates separate. This is a far cry from hanging the 10 Commandments in the lobby, of the school. This is a whole different ball game. I mean, you're going to have teachers that are going to refuse. So I saw that interview that we just played was a few days ago. I saw him today do a follow-up interview where he was asked, like, well, what about the Quran? What about Muslims? What about Jews? Like, are you going to have? He said, no, it's only going to be the Christian Bible. He said, because our country was founded on the Christian Bible and it wasn't founded on those other religions. And so, no, we're not going to teach those equally.
And we should remind people that, certainly as I see it, this is all joined up. So he in Oklahoma with this announcement is connected to Michael Flynn touring the country and trying to educate people in this kind of Christian nationalist thinking. And it joins up with the Supreme Court decisions.
Yes,
and,
you're right.
And on immunity and on Dobbs and on Chevron and all of these things. They're all connected. They're all about following this ideology, this kind of, this extremist ideology that shifts America to be, as far from the kind of modern liberalism as the rest of the world exists under.
To your point you just made. So when I posted that clip from last week, I got the Bible clip. I got a reply from somebody who said, this is never going to happen. This is unconstitutional. This is going to get thrown out. This violates separation of church and state. My response to him was, dude, have you been following the Supreme Court lately? Because I told him, I said, I predict to you right now that this time next year, the Supreme Court is going to throw out a lot of the separation of church and state doctrine, and we're going to have a whole new test, and this stuff is going to be legal.
America has changed. It's not just its kind of the soul. Biden talks about the soul of the nation. It's like this replacement of traditions and evolution. Because we evolve, all nations evolve. That's why the trajectory with Roe versus Wade was such that once the precedent is set, and then hopefully you go in a direction that is more inclusive and is gives more freedom. And when that changes direction, taking away freedoms, taking away a woman's right to choose, taking away things like gay marriage and interracial marriage, I'm sure all that stuff is on the way. You will find yourself in a country that has effectively rolled back 50, 60, 70 years. And that's what they want. And that's what they're getting. It's not just what they want, it's what they're getting. Like it's a coup in plain sight.
Yeah, we made these huge, tremendous progress from like 1965 to
civil rights,
2000, of in the courts and in the society and the laws, to where we came so far during those 3 or 4 decades, far in the right direction. And that's all being undone. It's like Back to the Future. It's like going back to the 50s where we're at right now.
And this rise of fascism is happening in other countries as well. It's just being defeated. I mean, tomorrow is the general election in the UK, where 14 years of conservative government is about to be thrown out in favor of a liberal leadership. And, that is a positive sign that, but the UK is a social democracy, with free healthcare and a welfare state and all of these, institutions that kind of grew out the Second World War. But we're seeing the rise of fascism in France with Marine Le Pen, and that's, neck and neck, and people are very scared about that. And it's getting to the point now where, I have family members dotted around who are genuinely don't know where they're going to live because they don't know where is safe. And, the UK is a kind of good bet at the moment with this new Labour government, hopefully coming in. But that is a terrifying notion, isn't it? That there are people in the US, Americans, who don't want to stay living in the US because they feel unsafe.
And the common thread that is sort of been energizing these right-wing movements around the world, whether it's Italy, Poland, Germany, UK, France,
Venezuela,
the United States, the common thread is anti-immigration. That's been sort of the thing that is fueling them, driving them, energizing their bases. It's the same. And we saw that in the debate. I mean, that was the only subject that Donald Trump wanted to talk about, right?
Yeah. And we should mention anti-Semitism as well, which is,
again, that's part of it. Yeah.
Right. But who thought that would become a thing again? You thought you would have learned the history. Incidentally, the documentary that is on Netflix at the moment, which I just watched, about Hitler. I can't remember what it's called, the Hitler Files or something, but it's like 4 parts. The similarities between what we're seeing now in the US and what happened in Germany in 1924, 1925, it's just uncanny. And we mentioned this a little bit last week, but I really encourage people to watch it. Okay, we have to finish, but I've got one last clip, and this is the golf clip, because we mentioned earlier about the only thing in that debate that energized Trump was them arguing about who had a better handicap on the golf course. And I really wish Joe Biden didn't engage on that subject. He really could quite easily have said, why are we talking about golf when you're a frickin' fascist? Your suggestion was that next time just mock the absurdity of his claim that he won the last 2 club championships on his own golf course in his own tournaments, and mock how cartoonish he is to use it as his best argument on fitness for office. Don't tit for tat a psychopath. Let me show this cute clip. Here it is.
Oh, he shanked it. Oh my God, I got that on video.
It's so good. I saw someone actually use that clip and intercut it with clips from Caddyshack, where they were kind of going, "Oh, he's terrible. His terrible shot there." So, I mean, this is really Trump's Achilles heel, isn't it?
This was the most disappointing part of the debate for me. As someone who watches a lot of golf, played a lot of golf, etc., because this was a golden opportunity to connect with voters who don't pay any attention to policy. And that's a lot of people, right? Yeah. That's millions of people. And you have this moment where Trump is asked about his fitness for office, given his felony convictions, his impeachments, and all of that. And he goes into the fact that he won 2 club championships, allegedly, supposedly, which is nonsense,
because he cheats.
And he even mentioned not senior club. He specifically said that, which was another hilarious part to me, was he said, not the senior championships, not the over 60. I won against the young guys. right? The club championship. And that was his reason why he's fit for office, because he won those. And I just thought, oh, Biden is gonna smoke him on this, because you know, the old Joe Biden, he would have just laughed and he would have just said, "Come on, man, you know, give me a break." You know, like those are your golf courses, those are your tournaments. You run those things are rigged. You rigged that like you know, like everything else. So, but you know, instead, Joe clearly was not on his game. Started talking about his handicap as vice president. And I was just like, because I follow golf Twitter, like all the golf influencer people, and they were all just like, now we're talking. We got a debate about golf handicaps. And I was just like, man, it ended up being like both guys are nuts about golf, instead of where it could have been just a huge. That could have been a real highlight, you know, of the debate for Biden, and he just lost it.
Yeah, shame. Okay, well, we shall spend the next week mourning the debate as we did last week, and we'll come back and talk more. And I'm sure a whole lot would have shifted again in 7 days' time. We have to finish. Ron Filipkowski, thank you very much. I'm Anthony Davis, as it says below us. If you would like to download the audio podcast that drops later on tonight, please rewind the show, watch it again, share it with your friends, and feel free to comment down below. And we'll catch you next week here on Uncovered. Thanks, Ron.
See you next week.